my friends. I have just finished recording this episode's content with Elisabeth, and I've got to tell you that it far surpassed my hopes for this conversation about younger TCKs, the age groups that I don't often talk about on this podcast or in my other resources. She brings a wealth of experience and wisdom and an elementary teacher's heart to the conversation, and I know that you'll gather as much from it as I did. As always, any links that we mention will be in the show notes. If you're listening on a podcast platform right now, you need to know that this also exists in video format, and the link to that YouTube video will be in the show notes as well. So settle in, maybe brew a cup of tea or coffee for yourself. And I am thrilled to introduce you to Elisabeth and to her wealth of insight and wisdom. And here we are. I promised you a very interesting and wise person for this discussion of the Flipsides, and it's Elisabeth. I actually haven't known her for very long. We met, right, Elisabeth, at a conference in Texas called MK Synergy. I highly recommend it for anybody who works with MKs. Really fascinating content was offered there. And one of the sessions I attended was Elisabeth's. And as I listened to her, the first thing that came to mind was how much she reminded me of Carol Burnett, which either is or is not a compliment. But if the listeners have not seen or heard Carol Burnett, you need to go find her on YouTube. The second thing that struck me during that conversation was the wealth of wisdom that Elisabeth holds, and particularly when it comes to younger children, younger MKs. And I realized that a lot of my content and resources tend to focus on older MKs, on the teens and the young adults. And so this is an overlooked population in the resources that I produce. And I thought it would be a really great idea to have Elisabeth on to share some of what she's learned in her years of caring for TCKs. So Elisabeth, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
I think because I don't know you all that well, because we only met over a weekend, and because our listeners probably don't, except for those who are related to you who are listening to this right now, could you just give us an overview of who you are, of what your life has been, what work you do, anything that is appropriate for a public forum like this one?
Sure. So after college, I got married, and I had a background in education. So I taught first grade for 3 years, loved it, and had a lot of understanding of early childhood at that time. So I thought I still had a lot to learn. Then my husband and I moved to Indonesia to work with an organization, and we took our 2 young children with us who were 1 and 3 at the time. I had a big move myself as a child, but I was 9. And that was from a small town with a really easy public school to a big city with a very challenging private school. So in my, as I relate with TCKs, those memories come back, and I'm able to think about the huge transition that was for me. But I had no experience when I left for Indonesia with young children and helping them through a transition. After 8 years, we returned to the United States. Reentry was a very difficult process for both of us and our children. After some time, I worked with member care for our organization for 10 years, and that role was to support families and children, TCKs, on the field. Very recently, I stepped into a role called International Family Resources. The difference between member care and my new role is that I'm focused on what we can do to support families proactively. When you think about pre-field or those initial early days on the field, when support and resources are so welcomed by most of us who've done that journey. So I'm not only developing resources, but also trying to distribute them, make them readily available to folks once they're on the field, and hoping to expand on parent training and parent preparedness, because hitting that new culture is quite a shock. And then our children are struggling too. And I really hope that the resources I'm providing are going to contribute to the spiritual and emotional health of families during their time on the field.
Yeah. You introduced us in your session to some of the resources you're working on, some of which are almost there. They're
Oh.
almost ready to be shared. They're so practical and so insightful and so just kind of matter of fact, like this is where the rubber meets the road. Let's address this. I think they're going to be really useful to missionaries serving around the world. So
That's
keep
I
doing
hope.
what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned, I told you that we'd probably go off script, and here we are. First question going off script. You mentioned how difficult it was for you and your children to return after the 8 years. Is that what it was in Indonesia?
Mhm.
What were the primary struggles that your children had, if there is one that was universal for all children or individually?
Mm. They had a sense of being outsiders when
Mm.
they came to school in the United States. My daughter particularly really missed Indonesia and did not wanna
Mhm.
leave. She
Mhm.
missed her friends, but it also was her home from the time she was 3 and a half until
Yeah.
11, so that was significant in her
Mhm.
life. My son was happy about being in America from his young perspective. He was about 8. But the difficulty of the transition, and I think the enormity of it,
Yes.
created it really, fed a sense of anxiety
Mhm.
and internal disruption
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
both of them.
Which we experience as adults too when we're in transition, but we have so many more years of having learned how to cope with difficult seasons. And a lot of times, these, especially young children, haven't developed, we call it resilience. I hesitate to use resilience in all senses when it comes to courage in children, because sometimes I really think that it's more lack of vocabulary and permission to speak of the hard things. But yeah, we ourselves are so discombobulated by these huge moves, and to imagine what it feels like to little people with big
Mhm.
hearts and big minds who don't have the experience that this will be okay, that I do have these tools to approach it with. It just I can imagine and only imagine that it would be overwhelming to their young selves.
That's so true, and you hit on a point there by saying that it's overwhelming to us as adults.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's one of the biggest challenges in caring for little ones' hearts and, well-being in
Yeah.
transition, because we ourselves are struggling to be at our best.
Mhm.
Our energy is sapped by a
Mhm.
lot of things that normally we don't need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So our children are, in a sense, in a risky situation
Yes.
where the demands on them are beyond what they can understand.
Mhm.
And the capacity of their parents to provide for them a sense of calm and to help them stabilize, that
Yeah.
capacity is reduced on the parents' part.
Yes. Yes. It's really a vicious circle, isn't it?
Mm.
I think we tend to talk about children, and I just did, and I caught myself a minute ago, as little people with little hearts and little minds. And they're little people in stature, but they have huge hearts and huge minds that are way
Mm.
more complex than we
Mm.
give them credit for. And so I think that is one of the reasons that people like you who have experience and wisdom with this people group are so important to the rest of us, me in particular, but others who might have forgotten what it's like to be a child or who
Mhm.
never really experienced being a child in transition, living between worlds in the world of ministry. So I just commend you for focusing on this people group somewhat in the work you do. I know that you go all the way up the age range.
Mhm.
Chapter 5 of Pieces of Purple is about the flip sides. It's about the tandem that MKs negotiate between the wonderful, the stuff they love and would never give up for the world. Don't you dare tear that out of my grip. And the stuff that's really hard, and that they exist at the same time a lot of times in the TCKs we know and love. My first question to you is, when you speak with the younger ones, and by younger I mean preschool, elementary, and maybe into middle school, when
Okay.
you speak to the younger ones, what are the things that you hear them celebrating? What are the things that they're so grateful for that they verbalize in their own way at that age?
For the youngest, I've heard TCKs who are preschoolers rejoicing in the simple and tangible
Mhm.
things that bring them joy. So those are anything from the park,
Yeah.
a place I can play,
Yeah.
to foods I really enjoy, and tangible experiences as I've had, and then animals. Animals always come up because
Always.
my son
Yes.
would chase the little chickies that there were chickens just running around in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, and he would chase the little chickies and catch them and
Oh.
bring them into the yard and show us.
Yep.
He would also catch lizards, and there were plenty of lizards where we lived in on West Java. So,
Yeah. The animals come up also a lot of times in a list of grief, even in older and young adult MKs. The pets they had to leave behind, the pets that couldn't make the move, the transition with the family. I'm constantly encouraging parents as much as they can and as much as they can afford to make sure that pet can go with their children of any age, because
uh-huh.
there's something so anchoring in having that little bundle of love that goes with them across the borders, right?
I heard from one mom in Taiwan
Yeah.
who has been in their first, they have been in their first term,
Okay.
and their son is young. And she described to me the kinds of adventures that they go on
Mm.
together. They made up their minds to visit every play place in this throughout the city and decide which ones they like the most.
I love that.
Other things they did were driving outside of the city and taking short hikes, sort of adventure
Mhm.
exploration.
Yeah.
And those have become memories for her and for her son.
Yeah.
But they helped both of them to be finding the good and the beautiful
Mhm.
in the middle of the tension of feelings where you wish you could
Yeah.
be back with your
Yeah.
family or what you knew in America.
Yeah, I always say that the hard stuff kind of jumps up and waves its arm in front of your face and says, I'm here, I'm the hard stuff." And the good stuff doesn't do that. So we might miss it when we're paying so much attention to the challenges, which are real,
Yes.
but they so need to be balanced out. What you're describing, we talk about ACEs a lot, the adverse childhood experiences, which don't get eliminated or undone by positive childhood experiences, but it helps the child's mind and heart to kind of have a balance. And what
Uh-huh.
you're describing in these activities that this family did is exactly that. It's intentionally building the positive childhood experiences into their lives. And even it sounds like making it a game, making it something that's fun, like
Mhm.
to try to get all these places in. What other things do you think parents can do to make sure that their children are aware of the good stuff? That they're sometimes just putting words to it anchors it in a deeper place. So, how can parents help their children to articulate what they love about being MGAs?
Mm. I read some encouragement from another TCK author, Ulrika Ernvik.
Yes.
She describes how helpful it is to tell your children stories about themselves when they're in preschool. And I love that
Oh.
idea. In my mind, that would be enriched by going ahead and drawing a page about what you're describing. So sometimes in the car or in quiet moments to say, once upon a time, there was a boy named Seth. I use my son's name.
Hmm.
And he lived in a city that had lots of interesting creatures you might discover on a farm or, whatever it is that you think about he had done that day or experienced that day.
Hmm.
Then put a photo, if you can, add a photo of him in his element with a lizard in one hand and a little chick in his pocket, in his shirt pocket.
Yeah.
You can go back and he can read the story of his life. See, that's what's important
Wow.
is to be able to go back and say, I loved this. I liked
Yeah.
that. That was a fun memory.
Yeah.
Because in our human nature, negative negative memories end up sticking and
Hmm.
speaking the loudest to us
Hmm.
because of associated strong emotions, trauma, in some cases.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
can give that gift to our children to be able to see and hold the both
Hmm.
sides of it, the
Hmm.
flip sides, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I love the storytelling. I mean, I write
Mm.
novels, so of course I love the storytelling aspect of things. And I
Yeah.
think even in older MKs and adult MKs, sometimes for them to go back and write the story of their lives and pick out those pieces that feel really intimate to them can reconnect them to that piece of their TCK-ness. I
Mhm.
was in a kind of a Bible study last night that I co-lead where we do holy listening. And 3 of us are MKs in the group, which I love. And one of the other leaders, who's about my age, so in her late 50s, started to talk about growing up in this country in Africa where she has this core memory of being wrapped by the African women who are caring for her, these wraps that they have around them that holds them close.
Ah,
And for her, that reminded her in a really intimate way of her spirituality, of faith,
mhm.
and how that feels connected. So I
Yeah.
think there's a gift that TCKs have been given, that their breadth of experience is so wide that we have much more to select from when we're trying to put words to spiritual identity or to emotions or whatever it is. We have so many more options to draw from as we remember the PCEs, the positive childhood experiences that will help us to balance, as you said, the hard stuff that we tend to drag with us in forms of trauma or unresolved grief or anxiety, whatever it might be. So I love those suggestions.
I find that doing that is going to be a gift to yourself as a parent
Yeah.
because when I look back on our first year in Indonesia, I remember very few specific interactions with my children.
Mm,
It's a clear example of how overwhelmed the brain is during that transition time. If you stop and take that time, even once a week,
mhm,
but with the youngest children, if you'll do it even
mhm.
more often, a couple times a week,
Yeah,
you have captured
yeah,
positive memories and moments, even if you don't have a photo to go with it,
yeah.
that then benefit you in terms of balancing your memories,
Mhm.
but also later, TCKs struggle so much to integrate all the
Yes.
parts of their story as one whole. It
Mhm,
feels distorted and there's tension between the memories. If we can help them by collecting them for them and
mhm.
allow them then to go back and read them even before they can read, but also
Yeah,
later for them to be recording their own.
yeah.
So, an idea for kids who are older
Mhm,
when they're able to write and draw. And I would even start with 3 or 4 year olds because they can dictate the words that they want you to write
right,
and they can draw and they can use color in place of an actual drawing of an object.
right.
But my strong recommendation is to give each of your children a journal, booklet, notebook, something. And you could call that book what they want to call it, or you could
Mhm,
just put, I like to use this fun little printout and it says, "This is my story." And I
yeah,
think about that hymn that goes with it. This is my story. This is my song. How you can look back and be thankful to God and also track those very difficult times. And mom and dad can help you remember what came along that
mhm,
supported you in that difficult time. So much of these little things that create me as a TCK, they are lost because of the
yeah,
rush and enormous the enormous flood of emotions on any given
yes.
day that we can't begin to process, much less little children.
That's actually been part of my story as well as I've processed a lot of the hard stuff that was in my past, in my childhood specifically, is
Mhm.
just it dawned on me months or years in, there were good things happening too. There were good people in my life who were nurturing me in the way that I intimately needed to be nurtured. And I missed those because I was so overwhelmed, as the word you used, by the harder challenges that I was going through. So I love the concept of memorializing
Yeah,
both aspects of what life was like. This was hard. And do you remember this too? Again, not to eliminate or ignore the hard, but to help
that's
the
very
spirit to
important.
balance them. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
my recommendation is that if you have a journal or notebook, you draw 4 squares on
Mhm.
on the page for the week
Mhm.
and think about something that made you glad or that you're thankful for in one square and not
Mhm.
force your kids to make the rest of them positive. Then encourage them and start to build vocabulary as they get older. Were you disappointed? Were you embarrassed this week? Did you feel threatened by anything? And that way, jogging their memories as you
Mhm.
can.
Mhm.
They may say something that just happened this morning when they're
Mhm.
really young, and that's fine too. But then helping them find a word that you can write down for them, and then later that they can identify
Yeah.
themselves, helping them with emotion vocabulary.
How often would you recommend to do this?
I would recommend once a week because
Okay.
partly it becomes a pattern and a
Yeah.
habit, and partly because weeks go by when we're in a transition to home assignment or something else, and we skip those. We there's no way we have capacity to keep up. If it's like a composition notebook type
Mhm.
thing, it can easily be slipped into the bag when we do travel. So
Yeah.
taking advantage of that is wonderful, but understanding that there are going to be times with sickness and other times of life that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. TCK International is a group that works a lot with MKs. They do a lot of the reentry retreats in the summertime. And I've participated in a small way in a project they're working on right now that I think will be released in May and
Okay.
shareable across ministry companies.
Okay.
But it is a tool to help the family to process during HMA. It's called Wayfinder.
So excited about it.
It's gonna be so good, and it's so practical, and they have 3 different categories, for each module, and the modules go about every 2 weeks, and it kind of follows the emotional arc of a home assignment and helps children to do, as you've just described, to really monitor what is impacting them for good and for bad, and to discuss it as a family, so it also creates opportunity for bonding and conversation among family members. So I
I
just wanted to put
agree.
that out there. Yeah, I
I'm
will.
so excited about that tool.
And it's so well designed. I mean, it's got
Yes.
graphics, it's got 3 different age ranges, so the really little ones and the middle ones and the older ones, so it's appropriate. It doesn't feel like kindergarten work to the older teenagers. It's
That is
just
important.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes we try to apply the methods or the resources to the wrong age group, and it ends up doing, I think, more damage than it helps. So if anybody follows me on Facebook, I will post about Wayfinder when it comes out. I will probably talk about it on future podcasts as well and link to it in the notes, but that's going to be really useful. We've kind of naturally navigated towards the hard stuff, the challenges of TCKs. And I have found in older MKs that it's harder for them to verbalize the hard stuff than the good stuff. It might not be easy to articulate either of them, but there seems to be some reservation, especially among people that we aren't intimately linked with, to admit, it feels like, that there's some challenges that come along with my parents calling to become missionaries. What are the challenges that you hear in this age group that we're talking about today, in the little ones with the big hearts and the big minds?
Mm. So for young children who are in preschool, their brains are not yet wired to be able to sort through the kinds of things that we call processing your emotions, which would be expressing them in words or being able to think about them as an individual, being able to think about what I'm thinking about, identify, oh, I'm sad and I was happy today.
Mhm.
These things are not in their capacity yet because their brains are still being formed in the prefrontal cortex, which takes until 25. So you have a nice long time for that to develop. Because of that, young children are particularly at risk of feeling emotional neglect or emotional isolation because their emotions will come out in behaviors and sounds.
Mhm.
So we hear screaming, we hear whining. Whining was a really difficult challenge for me as a parent to hear so much whining coming out. And what was going on is little ones trying to adapt, feeling out of sorts, feeling like I don't fit, and also longing for the grandparents who had been left behind.
Mhm.
Those are things early on. It's important that every parent have some support before they go to understand children developmentally, knowing as I get to the field, here's the phase my kids will be in, and here, therefore, is how I can meet those needs. Even though I know as a parent, no matter where I'm living, I cannot be a perfect parent, and my children desperately need the Lord Jesus in their lives. At the same time, it behooves me as I'm making a move like this to be proactive, to investigate what at each of these ages is going to communicate to my children a firm foundation, security, safety, and a sense of being loved that cannot be taken away. regardless of my transition style behaviors, which often sound like
Yeah.
meltdowns,
Yeah.
regardless of my unwillingness to shake hands with these strange new people,
Yes.
and regardless of my confusion. It's easy when you're a stressed
Mhm.
parent to feel
Mhm.
impatient with the
Mhm.
hesitations of your children when you've just gathered all your energy to go do something difficult and feel them pulling against you. So, first of all, with the youngest, they need someone in their lives who can externally regulate their emotions. When you come along with your infant and your heart rate is low and your
Mhm.
voice is low, you're speaking very few words and you're soothing physically. So there's whole hand touch and there's closeness. Science is showing us now what happens in the brain.
Isn't it
It's
fascinating what we're learning about that? Yeah.
yes. I want to become a
Yes. Whatever that
lots
is.
of things. It's like a
Yes.
neuropsychologist, a neuroeducationalist, all
Yes.
the ways the brain is involved in the work that we do, but it's fascinating.
Mhm.
When children are in distress, they are calmed and soothed externally. This is teaching their brains and helping to begin to wire a pathway to thinking that sends back a message to my, you know, emotions. My emotions are actually
Yeah.
very mature, even from a young age.
That's
I
right.
have loads of them and they spark all kinds of behaviors. But my feedback loop from my thinking brain that says, this won't last long. It'll only hurt for 5 minutes. Those kind of messages that are soothing and calming are not automatically being generated with
Right.
regularity when you're really young. So those youngest children are, very sensitive in their development to mom and dad's okayness. If mom and dad are doing well, and have some emotional maturity, spiritual and emotional maturity,
Yeah.
to be able to stand in with upset children, even when your whole world has just changed on you and the
Mhm.
demands on you feel overwhelming. So we not only need to know the need for that, we need Jesus. We need that spiritual connection with him in a move like this because we don't have that strength on
Yeah.
our own at every minute of
Yeah.
every day.
And I don't wanna glance over the fact that this is hard for adults who are in transition. I don't want us to sound like we're saying, "Well, if you're a good parent, you'll do this." No, there is gonna be, as you said, there's gonna be a faith piece to it. I need strength that I don't have right now. I need calm that I don't have right now.
Mhm.
I love the example you gave of, I think you said whole hand touch or full hand touch.
Mhm.
Because even just patting a child on the back with the tips of your fingers is not going to say as much as laying your full hand
Mhm.
on that child's back and
Mhm.
then engaging in conversation with the child. And I think that the illustration of the hand can be applied to our presence with the child in other ways too. Be fully there, be fully engaged. And I
That's
think
so
it
true.
might require asking the Holy Spirit, asking Jesus to momentarily clear our mind of those things that we do need to figure out and conquer in a transition period or even in a hard stage of life, to clear those out long enough that we can be fully full-handed present with the children
Mhm.
that need us in that moment. Yeah. Keep going. You
Yeah,
have great
so
great
there's gonna
insight.
be a need for me to get some external regulation as the parent too.
Right.
I didn't feel supported in that way as a young parent on the
Mhm.
field. Who can be that sounding board? And also, how can my spouse and I, and potentially somebody live on the field, how can we work well together to communicate? I'm struggling so much with
Mhm.
overwhelming emotion right now, and I know it's going to impact the kids. Would you be willing to stop by? Would you be willing to set a date with me
Yeah.
twice a week so we could have tea and I could download some of these thoughts, confusing issues that are on my mind
Yeah.
and decompress? Talking and looking proactively for ways that you're going to have in place that do stabilize you in the way that you're able to
Mm.
externally comfort a child.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the the marriage relationship is important, that we are willing with children to pass the baton every time it's necessary, and that when you arrive overseas, you do so with a cushion of extra
Mhm,
time
mhm.
so that mom and dad are both home, supporting one another and supporting the kids in the time of transition. The first 2 months are very challenging.
How can parents demonstrate to their children a healthy way of acknowledging and processing hard things without doing so to the degree that the children feel like now they have to comfort their parents? How can they embody for their children what they hope their children will learn gently and over time as they process the hard things too?
You bring up a good point because many TCKs are very sensitive to others' emotions
Mhm.
and to the atmosphere in the room. Stress is something they pick up on, and yeah, all these little radars
Yeah.
systems that they have going to read the room. It's easy for children to accept the untruth that now I'm going to have to help take care of mommy or daddy. Mommy's sad, mommy's stressed, mommy's sick. All these things are happening during that time.
Which is also a way of them calming their world. They feel like if I can calm mom and dad, then my world will feel less overwhelming. So
Exactly.
there's a
Just like
personal
just like
motivation.
adults, we look for
Right.
ways to control a troubling
Right.
situation to start to relieve that tension and fear.
Yeah.
It's a good idea for parents to talk about the whole range of emotions during pre-field
Mm.
because you'll have them as you go from church to place to house to people who are interested in supporting you, being part of your partnership team. That's already disruptive.
Mhm.
If parents are willing to step into some activities during the 6 months before they're leaving,
Yeah.
this can help normalize the strong emotions and also help you work as a family together on strategies. I am a big proponent of having meetings with your young children, and this
Oh.
continues as they get older. At a time when they're calm and not overwhelmed, at a time when you are calm and not, some of you might be on the field thinking, when will that be?
That'll be 5 years from now. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
5 years, 2 months, maybe.
Yes.
There is no time I don't feel overwhelmed. It gets better. So, a meeting looks like a time to sit down and talk about a challenge that we are having. Not you. You are having a problem with such and such, but to say, we are
Oh,
facing a challenge right now.
yeah.
We have big feelings. And it's important that when we
Mhm.
express those big feelings, we don't use them in some way. Our expressions don't hurt each other. So we're thinking about when things get broken or thrown around or kicked, and when siblings get punched or, you know,
Mhm.
things are taken out on them. And then there's the negative verbal explosion that can happen during a time of overwhelm.
Yeah.
A strategy to try to take a piece of paper and write down your child's ideas. It may pain you. They
Mm.
may say, so when I'm feeling really angry, I'm going to punch mommy instead of my brother. Okay. Well, as hard as it is, write that idea down.
Mhm.
This is the way this goes. Now, I have an idea, says mommy. When you're feeling really angry, we find something that's very satisfying to
Mhm.
help you express that anger with things, not with people. Heavy beanbags are a tremendous gift to
Mhm.
mankind. When you throw that thing, the thunk it makes is just so satisfying. Almost the
Yeah.
excellent satisfaction you get from, say, a stray curse word coming from your mouth when you're stressed.
A stray one. If they
It
even know that they're uttering curse words. Most MKs don't even know what curse words are, and they get
exactly.
they get in
And they
trouble for using them.
yes, very true. But the satisfaction of that oomph is what we're looking for.
Yes.
So we're talking about, and I've developed resources for things. One of them is a crazy fun idea. You take a paper lunch bag and open it and put it on the floor, put a couple. When you kick that open paper bag, you get that same sound.
Mhm.
And it's all kinds of energy to get that thing to move because it's so lightweight. So we're expending that energy and we're
Yeah.
expressing, I've got a lot going on inside. You'll find that there are children who really, really want to be quiet and alone, and they don't want your bean bags or paper bags. They don't like the pillow punching activity. It actually increases their stress.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason for the meeting. What helps you when you're starting to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, mom can say, well, here's one thing that helps me. What do you think of this idea? And mom and dad need to be demonstrating that.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, I'm so upset I don't know what to do and storming off to your room,
Mm-hmm.
instead, practice this so you can do it in a time of upset that you say to your children, it's time for me to do something with my big feelings. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you come back, you could say what you did with your big
Mm-hmm.
feelings. And if your big feelings come shooting out and you find yourself, as we do, yelling at children for being children and being angry and frustrated in front of them, please apologize.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like this. It is not okay for mommy's big feelings to hurt you. I think that might be what happened. Did my big feelings and my loud, angry words, did they hurt you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was scared, they might say, or they might say no, whatever. But then say, please forgive me. I'm going to try to remember next time that I have a plan for those big feelings. Sometimes they come busting out and it's not nice and it's not kind.
Yeah.
But please forgive me.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
So older kids then can develop these plans as well. But I also encourage them to have large muscle activity and heavy work. We call this
Yes.
heavy work because it brings balance between the stress in your mind and the stress in your body.
And
It's a very cool
the
science.
chemicals that go along with both of those, right? Finding a way to release the chemicals that have built up with stress.
That's right. So I always recommend that families with active kids
Mm-hmm.
or highly emotional kids,
Mm-hmm.
please get a chin-up bar and
Mm-hmm.
put it across a doorway at the height that they can reach. When you hang your whole weight from that bar, that's a big
Yeah.
input of sensory and it's a big demand on your muscles.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now my body is putting energy and attention to my physical body
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to my dismay and distress with the world as we know it.
Yeah.
There's riding a bike as fast as you can,
Mm-hmm.
running all around the
Mm-hmm.
house. And so we've compiled different resources like this
Mm-hmm.
that help families proactively engage in these activities throughout the day, especially during these
Mm-hmm.
high stress times, but it's a great practice to keep going with.
The description you gave for younger children of kicking a paper bag or whatever, I have known practices that will put the paper bag, for instance, at the end of the yard and have the kids run as fast as they can to the paper bag and then kick it, so it releases a little bit more of the adrenaline
Brilliant.
stored as energy in their bodies as well. So these can be, I love your descriptions, and they can be adapted for the personality of the children. A
Exactly.
pull-up bar for me would have been the absolute wrong way to go. I will pull up a croissant, but not my body. So adapting these to something that won't feel like an obligation or an imposition to the kids, but will actually feel good to them because
Yes.
it taps into something that they naturally would want to do.
Yes. And then other motions that we know are soothing to the body, like swinging and rocking,
Yeah.
having those options available for your kids too. My son, who's an adult TCK, put up a big swing thing down in the basement with a giant thing hooked to the cross beam. So he's like, it holds 3,000 pounds. Just to let the adults know it's okay to sit down on it. But of course, his little daughter, who's almost 1, absolutely loves swinging in that. And it's a very calming movement. Have those ideas before you go to the field so you can take along a simple hammock swing thing that you could attach anywhere.
I feel like some parents will say, but we won't know what the stress is going to be like before we go to the field. How can we adequately prepare before we make the leap to this new place? But what can they anticipate and address or build a toolbox for before they head overseas?
Mhm. That's what I'm so eager to promote in pre-field days,
Mhm.
an understanding and some practicing while you still have your family around you or your
Mhm.
familiar surroundings. One of the problems for young children is when they feel an emotion, they can't perceive limits to it. Many of us, if you think of being in an ocean full of emotion, we sense an anchor tied to it. And it gives us a sense of, okay, I'm this upset because of that conversation today. It isn't my whole life. It isn't everything about me. That is really bothering me. And I can narrow down the reach of this feeling.
Yeah.
Children are unable to do that. So for them, the feeling goes on and is all around them, is as deep as the ocean, and is as gonna last as long as
Yep.
forever.
In their minds, right? We know that's not accurate, but in their minds, that's what it feels like. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the reason for external
Yeah.
regulation, for parents to be sensitive to that
Yeah.
and use phrases like, if you've got to have a shot, it's very upsetting for any kid, whether you have a phobia about them like I do or not,
Mhm.
that this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
And it's gonna sting, and it might feel like someone's pinching you too. It's not nice to pinch, is it? That
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. I pinched my finger in the edge of the table the other day, and, oh, it's still sore.
Yeah.
And then to say, when it's done, when they finished and they say, "We're all done," it will still hurt.
Mhm.
I've been there. I had them. They still hurt.
Yeah.
And then in like 5 minutes, it hurts a little less. I'll just check in with you, and you can tell me when it starts to hurt a little less.
Hmm.
And then on our way home, it will hurt a little bit less. And soon it'll start to feel like it's achy in that place, but the pinching will be completely gone. Isn't that a
Mhm.
surprise? This is also anxiety reducing because you're laying out what to expect.
Yeah.
I now have a sense of control about the situation because
Yeah.
somebody has told me exactly how it's going to go.
Oh, I love that. I am from a generation of MKs, and it was more pronounced even in the generation prior to mine, but the notion seemed to be, whether it was spoken clearly or not, God called our family, and this is part of the deal, so you just have to suck it up. Suck it up, and
Wow.
this is what God called us to, so,
Mhm.
yes, it's gonna hurt, and we'll get through it, and we'll move on. Without the acknowledgement of the emotional and physical,
Mhm.
sometimes mental toll of these new things that hurt, and I'm so sad that the heart of Jesus for children was lost along with the Great Commission sometimes, that people have gone overseas with their children and just assumed that things would be fine, and in
Mhm.
essence, told them that they're not allowed to hurt and they're not allowed to complain and they're not allowed to mention the stuff that isn't comfortable to them. And what you're outlining is a way forward that allows for parents to engage in the pain with their children, not negating the pain, not saying, but it'll be better later, but to actually acknowledge the hard things with their children, because I think that's the only healthy way forward from
Mhm.
the very real suffering. Even though it might seem exaggerated to adults watching it, it's very real suffering for these children. And for it to be dismissed or minimized or blamed on God
Mhm.
has caused such damage. I work with TCKs and MKs today who are much older than I am. Just a couple weeks ago, I might have mentioned this before, I was at a retirement village nearby and met with about 25 of their adult MKs who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they're still grappling with the mismessaging that they received as children, that God wanted this, so suck it up. So what you're expressing is such a humane and Jesus-y way of engaging with children who are having a hard time, and not minimizing it and not
Mhm.
making them feel less than because they're not courageous enough to plow through like the adults are, even though the adults a lot of times are masking what they're
Mhm.
struggling with as well, as they look like they're thriving in new places. And we will all at some point, most of us, not all of us, get to a point of kind of letting our shoulders relax a little bit and breathing in this space and learning how
Mhm.
to function better in a more regulated way.
Mhm.
But that time before we get to regulation is crucial, not only in establishing who God is and what his heart for these children are,
Mhm.
but in establishing family compassion, understanding, and effort towards the wellness of others,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Instead of the thinking that perhaps you were raised with, I know I was, that anger is wrong.
Yes.
Um, we will talk about anger and we will brainstorm together what's appropriate to do with anger. The things that are not hurtful or destructive
Yeah.
to others or even to our belongings, but especially to others,
Yeah.
those are the things we want to put in place because the
Mhm.
Bible says, when you're angry, do not sin.
Mhm.
And that means when you're angry, everybody gets angry. Even Jesus was angry. So I'll say to parents of preschoolers, I'll say, you need to figure out where can anger go in your house? Where can it go?
Hmm.
Because otherwise it's going to go stuffed down in and it's going
Yeah.
to create difficulties of many kinds. When children are in distress, they're not able to learn. Their brains are
Right.
not learning
Right.
anymore. They're in shutdown mode.
So what is an answer to where can anger go in this house? What are some suggestions for
Mhm.
that?
Right. Having a meeting together and
Okay.
discussing that.
Yeah.
So those bean bags, different kinds of
Okay.
sometimes kids want something more comforting in the
Mhm.
sensory ways, so swinging and those different things. I discourage using time out with children in transition. The reason
Hmm.
is it sends a child away from you, but
Mhm.
the child needs you to re-regulate.
Ooh.
So I recommend time in, which means I'm going to have time in your room or in a
Mm.
quiet place with you.
Hmm.
And the only thing that's beneficial during those times, and my kids I've experienced with people on the field so many times, families, the same thing that we experienced in our family, which is kids even in elementary school
Mhm.
resorting to meltdowns out of an overwhelm of emotion.
Yes.
If I'm repeatedly sending you away, I'm sending away the fact that you're overwhelmed and that emotion away from me.
Mhm.
But it's also sending a deeper message
Mhm.
that I don't want to be around you when you have strong emotions.
Yeah.
When during time
Yeah.
in, the brain is not able to process language.
Yeah.
It also doesn't have memory. So when the child is overwhelmed with emotion, it's too late to say, what's a good strategy? Are you going to pick one of these things for
Right.
your anger? We need to catch that in the window, like just before they're ready to lose it.
Yeah.
And we don't always.
Yeah.
So if a child has become overwhelmed, it's not the time during that heightened emotion
Yeah.
to say, I thought you were going to use one of your strategies.
Mhm.
Why didn't you use one of your strategies? First of all,
Mhm.
don't ask young children a question why, because they don't have a clue.
Yeah. Yes, it's just instinct.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
also, it's a good time for no speaking. The
Yes.
silence and the quiet and the
Yeah.
calm are what's going to, through osmosis, calm
Yeah.
your child.
Yeah.
And the things to say would sound like, I'm right here.
Mhm.
I got you.
Mhm.
We're going to get through
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
I hear your big feelings, those kind of things, but
Yeah.
don't say all of them, just like
Yeah.
one, and then
Yeah.
leave some quiet for a little while.
You pull out a notebook with your script in it and go
That's
through
right.
the all the sentences.
That's
That
right.
that brings tears to my eyes, the concept of time in.
Mm.
And it shouldn't be revolutionary, but it is in
Mhm.
some senses. And it reminds me so much of a couple that's been on the podcast before, Josh and Elisa Crooks.
Mhm.
And I saw them do that with their children as they were preparing. They had moved from Germany, come to the States for a year, and then moved to Thailand. Talk about big transitions. And I
That
saw them
makes
do
me
that.
dizzy.
Yes. Say that again.
That makes me dizzy.
I know. And of course, there were times when timeouts happened because I mean, it was a logical time to do a timeout, but I also saw them kind of stop, drop, and hold. Like, this is a moment when we need to just stop everything and just hold our kiddos and be with them in their huge emotions.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that you gave it a word that it's time in, and that's
Mhm.
something that people can take with them. It's just a really easy reminder of this practice that I think can change
Mhm.
everything over time and repetition and create trust between the children and their parents. I can trust
Yep.
my parents with the hard stuff that I'm
Mhm.
expressing in maybe unconventional ways, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the Christian history of caring for children, there's a trend to seek out a punishment that will fit the crime.
Right.
So if you have shouted out mean things during your meltdown, or if you have kicked somebody or broken something or whatever, there's going to have to be punishment
Mhm.
served.
Mhm.
Instead, to sit together until the distress passes is,
Yeah.
I believe, like Jesus,
Yeah.
because he does not treat us as our sins deserve.
Yeah.
And I would go so far as to say these meltdowns are not in that category of sin as much as you think they are. They're a revelation of inner distress.
Yeah.
So for you to be available and present is the most important thing.
And we won't know the nature of the meltdown until we calm everybody down enough to have the conversation and to talk
Mhm.
through or find other modes of expression for younger children of what was really going on in that moment.
That's
I
right.
knew that this was going to be a helpful hour. We're already at the hour mark, and I don't know how I'm going to get this down to 40 minutes, but I want to ask you two things. Number one, is there anything we missed that you really feel that you want to say to our listeners? And then after that, if there's kind of one word of encouragement that you would have to any TCKs or parents of TCKs who are listening.
Okay. I would say, I would just stress again that last point that we made, that children's behavior during transition is not an appropriate time for what we think of as punitive response, taking away privileges, those kinds of things. It will it will reduce much more quickly in response to your nearness, your presence, and your willingness to wait it out
Mhm.
and discover what's been going on inside.
Mhm.
Because we recognize young children are not able to do this by themselves.
Mhm.
Elementary school kids may have parents assuming that they can do it themselves because they're older now.
Yeah.
And here I am with the 4-year-old who's having a meltdown. And you old 7-year-old, what's
Yes.
wrong with you?
Yeah.
But it's possible for adults to get into meltdown mode pretty quickly in a transition. So
Yeah.
think not that your that your older
Mhm.
kids are all set. They need you too,
Yeah. Yeah. So
especially
important.
middle schoolers when their brains start turning to mush.
Yes. Oh, and then
Yeah.
the hormones get in there and
Oh,
we're really in trouble.
yes.
Yes. Okay, that's very good advice. And
Mhm.
then a final word of encouragement to TCKs or to TCK parents or to both of them.
I think this will be for both. I like to share Deuteronomy 33:27. The eternal God is your dwelling place,
Mm.
and underneath are the everlasting arms. They don't get tired of drawing you near and comforting. And they're just as needed for parents as they are for children.
Yes.
The task of parenting in the best of circumstances is an enormously demanding job. So recognize in all of our weakness, in all of our failures, that we can depend on Him. And then that He can be a dwelling place for us, no matter where we are in the world and no matter what
Mhm.
transitions we're trying to grapple with. He is a safe and a steady dwelling place.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm guessing that people are going to want to know more about the resources that you've created or gathered, and I'll post this in the show notes, but can you tell me how people can reach out to you to find out what's available?
Yes, go ahead and post my email,
Okay.
and that way people can request access to those things. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that. I feel like we could go on another 2 or 3 hours, but there are time restrictions to this format. I thank you so much for preparing and coming. I think that you were the full hand touch to parents who are listening right now. Because, as you said, it's got to be so hard when we're in transition ourselves to have the bandwidth and the empathy that we need for other people when we feel like we need so much for ourselves as well, and we might not be getting it as adults. So I think that your voice and your approach and your encouragements have been a soothing thing, a healing thing for parents of younger TCKs who have listened today. So thank you for that. Who knows, we might have to repeat this some other time down the road. But I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your knowledge and your wisdom and for your heart for these little tiny people with big hearts and big brains and huge spirits that are just gathering information, absorbing information about who they are, who their parents are, and who God is during these formative years in sometimes tough circumstances. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye, everybody.